Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game So we're gonna have another fun and exciting episode for you guys today because we're going to be going over 4 more Nintendo 64 games that have active decompilation projects. The original video you guys seemed to like and you wanted to see 4 more, so that's what we're going to take a look at today. We're starting off obviously with Space Station Silicon Valley, one of the most fun open world games on Nintendo 64 and honestly a very creative and innovative game. But this is one that has never been re-released outside of the Nintendo 64 and it's definitely one of those games that kind of personifies just how weird and quirky the system could be. Now just so you know, on these decompilations I'm only choosing projects that have seen commits to the GitHub code in the last year, because there's a ton of different decompilation projects that have been stated to be started, but a lot of them don't have commits for 2, 3, even 4 years on GitHub, so I'm only limiting this to things I can say still seem to be in active development. And I do want you guys to remember, just because there is a decomp project going around doesn't mean it'll be done next week, next month, or even next year. And even from there, once the code is decompiled, someone needs to either recompile it or make a PC port. But this poor sheep here, I love that you get all this information. His second skill is just buying and his intelligence is going to be very low. Kind of feel like they dragged the sheep a little bit here. But as far as Space Station Silicon Valley is concerned, definitely a game that I would love to see a decomp of. In some of the later areas, the frame rate can definitely chug a bit, and as far as the camera is concerned, I would love to have a second analog stick because you could kind of free roam the camera around because it will fight you. Now if we take a look at the actual GitHub page right now, you're going to see this project is in active development. You're going to see the most recent commit as well. So you can tell this thing is definitely being worked on, but I can't stress enough, I don't want anyone to get too excited. Just because something is in development doesn't mean it's going to be finished anytime soon. Again, it could be next week, it could be next month, it could be next year. We'll just have to wait and see how this goes, but it definitely is showing a lot of promise here. And the best part is that every single game that gets 100% decompiled becomes a learned knowledge for other developers that might be working on their own decomp projects, because there's only so many functions and ways to use Nintendo 64 hardware, so once a lot of them are understood, it becomes slightly easier. Don't think that that's going to be a push button to decompile sort of situation. It still requires a lot of human man hours, but it definitely is progressing the entire concept forward. And I'm sure my 2 herding dogs, a corgi and a healer, are probably laughing at me right now metaphorically, trying to herd these sheep into the pen because it is relatively a hard task. But Space Station Silicon Valley would be a great game to get a decomp of because again, it is so much fun, and while it is still great to play on N64 or on Mr. FPGA, it's one of those things. This in 16:9 with high definition, upscaled graphics with a lot of different creature comforts and maybe even a free camera would just be something that makes an already great game that much better and that much more fresh feeling, because again, we have nostalgia for these games. We might want to go in and replay them, but if someone didn't grow up with Nintendo 64 and try to play this now, maybe they just might think it's a little bit too old and they might ignore it and move on to the next system. Now the second game in active decompilation as of the GitHub code is Donkey Kong 64, and I feel like this one's going to be the most exciting for everyone in this video, because this again is an absolutely outstanding 3D platformer from Rare, and if you use the Swap Anywhere ROM hack, you're able to just kind of move around and become whatever Kong you want. So as far as the decomp is concerned, of course it's still going to target the base ROM, and not something like the Swap Anywhere, but I'm sure once actual modifications are allowed in, if this does get a PC port or a recompilation, you'd be able to have something like Swap Anywhere. And this title is one of those games that just looks absolutely outstanding on the N64 hardware. I still think it looks incredible today, but again, this in widescreen with something like 120 frames per second would be great. And while Donkey Kong 64 does support widescreen natively on N64, it's one of the few games that does so. Getting this thing just looking more modern would be that much more fun, especially with stuff like the aiming here. I feel like dual analog controls would definitely be an asset, and that's something we've seen in a lot of the recomps and PC ports based on decompilations. You see something like getting a free roaming camera that just makes the game feel more modern on the control scheme, and that always is something that is going to improve the experience, because even today, if you play these things on Mr. FPGA or you play them on real N64 hardware, if you've been playing too many modern games, suddenly trying to deal with a single analog stick and fighting the 3D camera just becomes a little bit antiquated feeling, even for me, who absolutely enjoys the ever-loving hell out of all these N64 games. So if we take a look at the git commit here as well, you're going to see that there was a commit as of last month, and this definitely seems to be in very active improvement stages. And again, I can't stress enough, I don't know when these things are going to be done. People get excited, or people like to say clickbait down below because something isn't done. You'll see here they list a percentage as 56%, and that can be a little bit of a variable, but it seems like this one definitely is seeing some progress, and maybe sometime in the next year or so you'll see a video from me and everyone else saying that Donkey Kong 64 has hit 100% decomp status, and then from there, modders, developers, porters can take that code and kind of do whatever they want with it. And don't forget, just because something does get decomp doesn't mean it's ever going to technically see a PC port or a recomp. It just depends on other developers coming along and utilizing that decomp code to do what they want. But imagine this sound coming out of something like a modern port. 45 seconds of audio, and I'll be right back with 2 more games. And before we get too far into the third game in decomp status, if you ever wondered why video game Esoterica was successful, this is the reason why.
Licking my way to the top.
Sorry, I just couldn't help myself there. That definitely is a double entendre, and I always laugh when I hear it. But this is obviously Gex 64, and even though we do have those remasters of the Gex games out, it is one of those things I absolutely fell in love with Gex, Gex 2, and Gex 3 back in the PlayStation 1 era. And while I never actually played the N64 versions because I had the PS1 copies, it is a franchise that I still have fond memories for. But again, it's one of those games that definitely has aged, and maybe not in the best ways. I would say of all the games on this series right now, for the decomps, Gex 64 has the absolute worst 3D camera. It's going to get stuck in corners, it's going to fight you, and it's really just going to keep you from having as much fun with the game as you possibly could. And that's why these decomp projects are so important, because think of all the results we've had with different decompilations that have become either PC ports or recomps. Stuff like Ship to Harkinian, or stuff like 2 Ship to Harkinian, the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, and Majora's Mask ports. Those improve on so much of the base game, especially for something like Majora's Mask. Having that free roaming camera just makes the game easier to play. You stop fighting with the actual technology and game engine underlying something, and you just start having fun. And Gex 64, again, is just one of those games. I absolutely love it. I have a ton of nostalgia for it, but I'm now a little bit too old to sit here and want to fight with a 3D camera. Back in the day when I was a kid and it was summer vacation, it didn't matter how many times I died, I would happily just sit there and continue to play video games. As now, it's not as much. And if we take a look at the GitHub page here, you're going to see that there was a commit as of 2 weeks ago, and this one definitely seems to be in very active development as well. There really isn't any percentage complete statement here, so again, it could be 20%, it could be 15%. We just know that someone is working on it, and hopefully it does yield some results soon. But leave me a comment down below and you tell me, and I always love asking this question, if you could snap your fingers right now and just make one decomp project get finished and then appear as either a recomp or a PC port, which one would it be? I hear Sin and Punishment a lot, and that definitely is high up on my list, but obviously, if you've been watching this series, you know that Bomberman Hero is definitely my #1 most wanted one. But I will say, at least in the real-time lighting here, Gex 64 I think still holds up visually, and compared to some other N64 games, still has a nice look to it. And that's weird to say for Gex 64 because it's not anyone's super favorite game, maybe outside of nostalgia, but they could definitely get a lot of the blur out of this in a port no matter what hardware you went over to. Because obviously now with the Mario Kart 64 port, we see these decomp projects actually getting ported to other consoles, not just PC, which is what everyone expects the target platform to be. And moving over to another Bomberman game, this is Bomberman 64, the first of the 3 games on the N64 in 3D, and I would say this one isn't my favorite, obviously as Bomberman Hero, but it is still a fun time. And there's something about Hudson Soft games on Nintendo 64, they had some of the best music I think Hudson Soft has ever made for any console. So this is going to be your second soundtrack sample, 35 seconds, but come back, I'll talk more about this decomp project and tell you which one of the 4 I want to see finished first. Honestly, I have no idea who they had doing the music back in the day for these Bomberman games, but it's just 100% hitting for me all the time. And now this decomp definitely is in active development. If there's one thing I would love to see out of this game, because the camera is relatively good, would just be a dedicated jump button if anyone ever decides to recompile or port this thing, because Bomberman 64 isn't really a proper 3D platform because it doesn't really have that basic jump ability, as you can do bomb jumps in the game, but it's one of those things that kind of feels completely different. While that is fun from a gameplay hook design, I'd love to see someone mod in a jump button just to basically make the game something completely different. And you'll see here there was a commit as of 5 months ago, and there is active development on this one as well, although it seems to be maybe the least of the 4 that I've talked about on the video, and it is from the same team that's decompiling Bomberman here, which we talked about in the first part on this one. But all 3 of the Bomberman games on N64 are a ton of fun, and all of them are slightly different than the others. I would say in my instance, Bomberman Hero is the #1 top spot, Second Attack is coming in at number 2, and the original Bomberman 64 is number 3. But that's not to say it isn't a good game, it just doesn't hit the same way. It's one of those things that you leave me a comment down below, of the 3 Bomberman games, which one did you play and enjoy? But obviously I think it's going to be a really easy answer for everyone here. Of the 4 games on this list, which one you'd love to see decompiled first? And the one I would definitely love to see decompiled first has got to be Donkey Kong 64. It's an incredible game, it has a ton of awesome graphics, a ton of fun characters, and just a metric crap ton of gameplay. So seeing this thing running at 4K with dual analog controls, stuff like that would just absolutely be stunning. But again, can't stress enough, decompilations mean nothing other than the code's been decompiled. We'll have to wait for ports. But short of that, we're done. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.